As the Commission may recall, this issue was brought forward, I believe, approximately a month ago at a study session concerning the miscellaneous zoning ordinance amendments that are being proposed, and it was brought forward at the request of the City Council Subcommittee on Public Health and Safety. And the request at that time was for the Planning Commission to consider including an amendment that would require a conditional use permit for new retail outlets selling firearms and ammunition, and also to consider as part of that amendment establishing various spacing requirements between those types of uses. When the Commission considered that issue at that prior study session, the Commission had a number of questions about that proposal and requested that staff come back and provide further background information. So at tonight's hearing, some of that background information that was previously requested by the Planning Commission is included in your packet for consideration, and we're here to just receive direction from the Commission on essentially whether the Commission would like to proceed with consideration of this issue. If you have further questions, we can do further research and bring that information back to you and just receive your input on this issue. So there's not an amendment before you at this time. There's just additional information in response to your prior request, and then we're here to seek direction on how to proceed. If the Commission desires further information, we would suggest you continue discussion of this matter to a future date to be determined. Of course, we would issue appropriate notice for that meeting, and then we could bring back that information to you if you believe, if you would like us to draft a proposed ordinance amendment and bring that back to you for consideration either at a study session or public hearing, we can do that as well. Or again, if the Commission believes this issue shouldn't be considered any further, you could give us direction to not proceed at all.
May I follow up? What is the rationale for even proposing the conditional use permit process for a firearm retail establishment?
The rationale that was provided to staff, conveyed via the Public Safety Committee, was that there's a concern about proximity of these types of uses to certain sensitive land uses such as schools, parks, etc., because there's a concern that minors that frequent those types of uses could go to a gun store and be exposed to firearms and ammunition sales, and be put in a position where there may be a hazard to them of some kind.
From the comments I've heard tonight, which may or may not be accurate, the retail establishment is already highly regulated as it relates to the sale of its product. We're not here examining that issue at all, correct?
Correct.
We are here only looking at whether or not the conduct of a business is appropriate or not for a particular geographic region within the city.
Essentially correct, although I should have added the Public Safety Committee convened one more time after the Planning Commission's prior meeting and provided further input that the spacing requirement did warrant further study, and recommends that if the Planning Commission proceeds with this matter, to just proceed with the use permit requirement without the distance requirement at this time, pending further study. So if we were to come forward in your direction, we would just be bringing back the use permit requirement without the distance standard.
All right, and if a use permit requirement were in place here, what would a proposed operator of a retail firearm establishment have to show to obtain that conditional use permit?
They would have to demonstrate compliance with the findings needed to approve a conditional use permit. And we can go through what those are in the ordinance, but they're essentially compatibility, issues with surrounding land uses, consistency with the general plan, and ensuring that there are any environmental impacts that are not being addressed.
And perhaps my final question, is there any data or reports of any incidents relating to the 2 retail establishments within the city of Pleasant Hill that causes anyone on the public safety committee concern?
Perhaps the city attorney can answer that question.
No, there is no history of any kind of incidents involved with either the 2 existing gun dealerships. The one has only been in place for less than a year. And as of yet, there's been no problems, and there's no history with the other one.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question of staff.
Yes.
Greg, if a business was to come in to the city counter wanting to open up a business to sell firearms and ammunition, isn't there already a process in place for permit and application to do so?
Commissioner Abbott, there is a process, a review process through the police department where they do a background check, but there is not a discretionary land use process. It would essentially be a ministerial zoning permit. So there's not a public notification process, there's not a hearing process, there's not analysis of compliance with any kind of findings.
Unless there's some sort of variance involved or something of that nature.
Correct.
But generally, they would go through the same process any other business would be.
Most other businesses, right. With the addition of the police department's background check process.
Question? Mr. Muscio?
Yeah. All right. You took too long.
But I got it down, I'll forget it
No.
later. I'll forget it.
Greg, where are firearms retailers allowed to locate? In any retail neighborhood business?
Let me look that up for you.
Well, I can ask my question.
Greg, it's not listed.
Well, that's true. There's not a separate use classification right now. They're considered in the same category as retail sales. There's not a sub classification that defines them differently than a standard retail sales outlet. So essentially, the retail business district, the neighborhood business district, general commercial district, any district that would allow retail sales.
Okay. Thank you.
So would that also apply to bow and arrows? I mean, same issue, same business type.
I think that was a serious question.
It really was, but that's okay.
Well, I'm not sure I understand it. Or is your question whether the proposed ordinance would, or whether it's considered a retail sale?
Considered retail sales.
Sure.
Same thing.
Okay.
Mr. Wallace?
Do you remember?
I'll think of it in a second. I'm a little bit torn on this because I believe very strongly in safety and trying to protect our kids and grandkids and all the rest of the stuff. But I'd like to make the comment also, I hunt and have weapons. I went to Arkansas. My brother bought me a shotgun for a birthday present. In Arkansas, it took about 20 minutes and they handed me the gun. When I came to California, I called the chief of police and I said, okay, I've got this great shotgun my brother gave me. What am I supposed to do? And he said, go down, turn the weapon in, fill out the card, go back and get it in 11 days. Okay? And so Pleasant Hill had the regulations and the ordinances in there. It made me kind of wonder. But I've got a question for you. You keep saying conditional use permit. Would you define conditional use permit and use permit? If someone came in and opened a business and they shut down, do they still have the 6-month window to resell under that use permit to another gun buyer, or is the conditional use permit saying that that goes away, that the new buyer would have to start all over?
When we say conditional use permit and use permit, those are one and the same thing. And again, the ordinance that was originally proposed by the Public Safety Committee would only apply to future businesses, not current businesses. So none of the current businesses would be affected. They would be legal non-conforming. In the event a future business needed to obtain a conditional use permit and then that business lapsed for more than 6 months, then that permit would be void
Okay.
and they would have to reapply.
Because there is a definite difference if my wife says conditional or not.
Oh, okay.
I just had a follow-up question on any complaints that we've had. The Public Safety Committee, are there police officers that serve on that committee?
I defer to the city attorney on that. I haven't been part of those discussions.
No, the Public Health and Safety Committee is an ad hoc subcommittee of the City Council. It consists of 2 City Council members only.
Oh, okay. So that's where this idea originated, is that ad hoc committee?
That's correct. That committee was actually established when Mayor Durant became mayor, and it was out of concern for addressing this issue that had been brought to his attention, as well as a couple of other issues.
Okay, that is helpful.
Mr. Mascaro?
I just want, I comment on that another question. I just want the audience to know that we are not the city council. We are not elected, we're appointed. And so take it out on somebody else. But I did have a question. If we had a gun dealer want to come in and put in an indoor range, where would we allow that? I think Martinez has that type of situation, if I recall. I don't know if they're still in business, but.
You know, we have to take a look at how that would fit into one of our existing use classifications. We don't have a separate classification for that. It might be, you know, it might fall under a commercial recreation use, which would be a conditional use permit in most zone districts, but we'd have to take a look at that.
Okay, well, if I could just finish my comment, then I'll be done. Thank you for the night. I would like to see something in regards to that, arranged, whether it's with a gun shop or without a gun shop, where that would be allowed, if it's in LI or where it would be allowed. Otherwise, I'm not interested in seeing this ordinance come back.
I would concur.
Wait a minute, what did you?
I don't want to see this anymore.
I really don't either.
Unless, you said unless something.
No, I'd like to see it, I'd like to see some regulation on where we would allow a range, indoor range, because that's always a possibility. And we seem to be dealing with things after the fact. I'd like to know where we would allow that. I'd be happy to entertain that type of regulation, whether it be a light industrial, as opposed to retail. I really don't want a gun shop, I don't need a gun shop. An indoor range in borders, especially. With or without the books. But other than that, I really don't want to see this particular firearm ammunition sales ordinance amendment back. That's it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Mascaro and Commissioner Abbott. I've heard no compelling, and certainly no rational reason that this has even been brought before us based upon land use and permitting process. If there are issues unrelated to land use and permitting, I have no comment, but I see nothing for this commission to discuss or be further involved in.
And I concur also.
Mr. Abbott?
I concur with my fellow commissioners. I was quite shocked to see this come before us as a planning commission the last time it was before us. I feel no need for an ordinance or amendment to our current ordinance for this. If there was a particular safety issue that warranted control of something like this, I mean, we would have to be in bad shape. We're not the city of Oakland. And believe me, I work in downtown Oakland by Lake Merritt, and it's a game to get from my office to the BART station without it being an issue. But we don't have that here in Pleasantville. We have law-abiding citizens, and I feel that we can conduct ourselves accordingly, and I do believe in the Second Amendment rights.
prior 3 commissioners. I don't want to see this again.
Motion. Ms. Maverick?
Well, I still feel like I'm in the dark about the thinking that, that originated this, and I'm not saying that there may not be some merit to it. I just don't feel like I have been given enough background to understand why we're considering this, and that's exactly, now that we've had hours of testimony, that's exactly what I said the last time we saw it, is I just don't yet understand it. So perhaps there's just more need for clarification if this is ever going to come back to us. You know, if there were, and I'm just going to be out front about this, if there were council members that have concerns, then I think we need to see those concerns spelled out. And I would consider this coming back to us if I understood why and what problem it is we're trying to solve here. So that's where I am at this point. I still feel kind of confused. Yes.
Well, I can tell you that the genesis of this was the second gun dealership that went into town right near DVC. And when that happened, it was brought to the attention of several council members with the concern that it was across the street from a school, that there had been no notice to the school or to the neighboring vicinity about this type of business going in there. And the question was raised, shouldn't there be a public notification process and a use permit at least for that kind of business to go in? So that's where it started.
And that does get to the one concern that I do have, even after hearing all of this testimony, is it has to do with notification. I mean, we have methods of notifying people if the liquor store is going in, but, you know, I can definitely see some value to notification to the neighborhood and to all the appropriate people if we have an ammunition and firearms type of operation going in there. Yes, I would want to know if that was going in my neighborhood. So that part makes sense to me. I don't know where we would go from there, if there's a way to set up a process. Maybe we need to look further at this and understand how we can address that concern. I am still a little bit confused about, okay, it went in across from a school. I need to understand exactly what that danger is. And I think I said this in the last hearing as well. And I'm speaking to staff at this point, folks, because I really don't quite get this. And I think there may be some valid concerns here, but they haven't been spelled out in a way that I can understand them. So I would just say, if there's concern about proximity to school, specifically what? That students will go in there and buy ammunition? I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be simple-minded here, but I don't quite get the nature of the risk, the nature of the concern. You know, I think it's easy to respond emotionally to it, but in order to agree to go forward with something like this, I need to have spelled out specifically what the risk is. What's the risk to a church? I mean, to be blunt, are we afraid somebody's going to go buy ammunition and shoot people in the church? I mean, I don't like to talk this way, but somebody needs to spell this out for me in order for me to understand what the problem is we're trying to address.
Well, all right, thank you. I'd like to ask a question to staff here. I'd like a little bit of illumination here on what procedures the police department has for allowing the sale of guns and ammunition in Pleasant Hill. Are there any requirements?
It was just what Greg mentioned earlier. It's a background check on the dealer before this type of business opens up. The police department does conduct a background check, and we need to approve that. But that's it. And then they need to get a business license.
Okay. All right. Well, I share Commissioner Mascaro's concern about a firing range here in town and to where it should be located. Certainly, it hasn't been